Good morning to you. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to our video discussion today, January 20th, 2025. Happy MLK Day, and also happy Inauguration Day, especially in the United States. As you notice, it's not a tropical weather video as we usually do on this channel, but I thought, how about we take some time today to talk about United States weather? Gonna try to get into that a little bit more, at least over the next several weeks, obviously, since we're not in hurricane season right now. So I decided, why not talk about weather that's going on in the United States? And we certainly have a lot of it to talk about today, which includes the potential for a pretty historic, Gulf Coast winter storm. Yes, you heard that right. We're talking about the potential for a winter storm along the Gulf Coast, including portions of Texas, Louisiana. It includes Houston and New Orleans and portions of southwestern Louisiana, typically areas we talk about when it comes to hurricane season, and also severe weather, potentially going to get not only snow, but several inches of it. And that is certainly historic, especially for that region of the United States. So let's get started with today's video. Starting off with the National Weather Service watches and warnings map, and you can see lots of weather to talk about. But first of all, just want to point out the extreme cold that we have in the United States right now, which is why we have the setup that we do for a winter storm along the Gulf Coast. But look at all these extreme cold warnings that are in effect for the northern plains. Temperatures, I think, or at least wind chills, will be potentially in the negative 50s for portions of these northern Midwestern states, and also the higher elevations of the mountains as well. And that extends all the way far south as Texas. And that means we have a very huge cold air mass which extends all the way to the Gulf Coast. And we have a low pressure that's going to develop in the Gulf of Mexico. It's going to tap into all that cold air. And that's why we have the potential for a winter storm to set up along the Gulf Coast. And because of that, there are winter storm warnings in effect all the way from, yes, southern Texas, right along the Texas-Mexico border, extending to the Florida Panhandle and southern Alabama. And I'd assume in the coming hours, we'll probably see some of these watches and warnings extended into further northern Florida and the Carolinas coast, because it's not just going to be Texas and Louisiana that are going to get snow. This is going to be a pretty widespread impact event that'll span the entire Gulf Coast and even into the Carolinas too, although they'll probably get lesser amounts of snow. But really quickly, I want to talk about briefly the snow that we already got, and that was in the Northeast yesterday. If you remember my video from yesterday when we talked about the tropics, so I also did mention briefly a winter storm that was going to impact the Northeast. It happened. Let's talk about some of the snow totals. Generally, though, I will say a slight underperformance when it comes to snow, especially along the coast. Portions of Long Island generally got 2 to 3 inches, and right here in New York City in Central Park, clocked in at 1.6 inches, and the general forecast was for around 4 to 5 inches total. A slight underperformance, I think we kind of messed up with the banding a little bit, although there was a huge thump of very heavy snow for several hours around 7 to 8 o'clock last night, and that really brought the amount of snow that kind of carried the whole event. And we had snow total rates, I think, as much as 1 to 2, even 3 inches an hour. It was a very heavy band, and it dropped quite a bit of snow, at least enough snow that we got as much as 2 to 3 inches across portions of Long Island. And then obviously we had higher totals inland, as much as 8 inches in portions of southern New York, Highland Mills, 8.1 inches in the northern New Jersey, Ringwood, New Jersey, 6.3 inches, and a few 5 inches as well. And let's see what we saw out of Elizabeth, New Jersey, 3.7. Can I find Newark in here? Is this Newark? No, that's Harrison. But in general, as you'd expect, 3 inches, 2 inches along the coast, including portions of southern New Jersey. They even got a little bit of snow. And then just inland, heading into northern New Jersey, into the interior Northeast, we got 4 to 5, some inches, some areas clocking in at around 8 inches. So generally not a bad forecast, but there was a lot of expectations for potentially the city getting as much as 3, 4, even 5 inches of snow. New York City only ended up getting around 1 inches, 1.6 inches. But we still saw some significant snow totals surrounding the area. So that is that winter storm. Now that's moving out, and you could see the snow totals as much as 5, 6, 7 inches, extending all the way from the Virginias into Maine, especially along the southern coast. Some areas even in Maine getting as much as 10 inches. So some areas saw some pretty significant snow totals, others didn't. But that's that snowstorm that happened last night. Now we move on to another winter event, and obviously that is along the Gulf Coast. As I mentioned, potential for pretty decent accumulating snow in places like Houston and even New Orleans. Pretty incredible that we're even talking about it, including some areas along the Gulf Coast, including Gulfport, I think. I think so. Let's actually see what the snow total forecast is. This is out of the Houston Galveston Weather Office by the National Weather Service. Houston could see as much as 3 to 4 inches. Galveston as well, 3 to 4, and extending down into southeastern Texas, potentially 4 to 6, and then accumulating snow up to 1 inch, extending into surrounding areas. And they even highlight a potential for banding snow that could lead to locally higher amounts. So the general projection is 3 to 4 inches. Maybe we could see areas that could see slightly more than that. Obviously depends on how bands set up, and that's usually how we get the highest snow totals is wherever banding snow sets up, and clearly the National Weather Service highlights that. And into Louisiana as well, New Orleans potentially seeing as much as 4 to 6 inches. Slidell, Louisiana, 4 to 6. Gulfport extending into the Gulf Coast, the east extending eastward into the Gulf Coast, 3 to 4 inches. In Pascagoula, Mississippi, 2 to 3. And even as far south as near the mouth of the Mississippi, get this, even then you could see potentially up to a trace of snow in places like Venice, and even along the coast of Louisiana, like Houma, and even extending to the southeastern Louisiana coast, could potentially see as much as an inch or so of snow. Houma, Louisiana, expecting 3 to 4. Bottom line, accumulating snow expected across the Gulf Coast. Certainly something that you don't talk about every single day, especially for a region like the Gulf Coast, which is usually a place like this, especially for this channel. You would usually think we're talking about tropical impacts. Not this time, and even as highlighted by this graphic, this is the Winter Storm Severity Index. Look, in portions of Louisiana, get this, moderate to potentially major impacts for snow. And I would imagine so, given that we're talking about several inches. So one thing to mention, and this is especially important given a lot of people don't usually deal with this type of weather, the best recommendation for especially accumulating snow is, if you do not have to travel, do not do so. The roads will be very slick and wet. And if you are traveling outside, tread carefully. Do not move fast. You could potentially end yourself in a car accident of some sort. Winter weather makes the roads very slick and very treacherous to travel, and portions of Louisiana are in that major impacts highlighting for the Winter Storm Severity Index. So bottom line, treacherous conditions out there because of the expected winter storm, and keep that in mind as you obviously plan your travels with this storm. So had that extra tab. So let's move on now to the timing. What to expect, when to expect the snow to move in. This is the latest GFS run, and we'll also take a look at some of the mesoscale models too, like the NAM and the HRRR, since they are the actual radar models, so they generally have a good handle on the snow totals as well. But through today, not much expecting when it comes to weather. The snow really begins to move in tomorrow. That's when we have a low pressure develop in the Gulf of Mexico, and then into tomorrow afternoon, and then into Wednesday. Looks like tomorrow afternoon is when we're going to see the heaviest snow over Louisiana and over Houston. And then obviously right along the southern Gulf Coast is when we're going to see some of this freezing rain and sleet. And watch this area of purple and pink as well, because it really becomes a significant threat for those, especially in northern Florida. And watch that pan out. The snow then moves eastward along the Gulf Coast. It looks like tomorrow evening into early Wednesday morning is when the eastern Gulf Coast gets it, and then into Georgia and the Carolinas overnight Tuesday into Wednesday, and then especially across northern Florida and southeastern Georgia. Look at all this pink and purple. That is indicative of freezing rain and sleet and ice accumulations as well. And this is even more of a wintry mess than snow is. So even if you're not going to see heavy amounts of accumulating snow, you might want to keep out for the ice. And in fact, before we move on, I do want to quickly show you, this is the 6E GFS in terms of freezing rain accumulations. And this is from another site, because this model's from Tropical Tidbits. This is from another site called Pivotal Weather. Some of you may know. But look at this. GFS predicting in northern Florida and even extending into portions of southeastern Georgia, accumulating ice. And this is even more of a hazardous weather, or a weather hazard, I should say. Ice, when it coats the roads, it makes it extra slippery, even more than snow does. It makes it very dangerous to travel. And if you're not careful, you could end up in a pretty serious accident. And this also leads to potential damage as well, to trees too, especially when ice accumulates on trees. And as much as a quarter to even a half an inch of ice is being projected by the GFS across portions of northern Florida. And I think roughly around this area is Tallahassee. So around the Panhandle, Tallahassee area could get in on some freezing rain, and that'll be a very big weather hazard to watch for as well. And we'll probably get some watches and warnings for that area very soon. So then Wednesday comes around, snow for the Carolinas coast, and then it moves out Wednesday afternoon, and finally the weather clears out around Thursday. And before we move on, just want to see what the mesoscale models show. So let's actually look at the NAM 3 kilometer. Roughly into tomorrow, that's when we see the snow onset. Looks like it begins first in the Houston area, according to the NAM, as mixed precipitation and sleet, and then it transitions over to snow by around late tomorrow morning into tomorrow afternoon. And then you see the heaviest snow over portions of Louisiana tomorrow afternoon, and then moving into New Orleans by tomorrow evening. And then by the time we get to the eastern Gulf Coast and the Panhandle, look at all this pink and purple, really treacherous, mixed sleet, freezing rain into tomorrow night, into the early hours of Wednesday. And then as we head into overnight tomorrow night into Wednesday, that's when we also see snow along the Carolinas as well. And looks like generally, if you're in Georgia into the Carolinas, you could potentially get as well 1 to 2 inches of snow. So it's not just Louisiana that's going to get in on the snow action, though. If you're in the Carolinas as well, keep in mind as you head into Wednesday, you could potentially get some accumulating snow as well. And then as we head into Wednesday afternoon, all of this clears out and the mess is out of our way by Thursday, at least in terms of the winter weather side. But if you actually look at, I'm going to change this to the eastern United States, and let's change this to the GFS. I want to show you another part of why this is really treacherous. Let me back this up to now, because we have the ice, we have the snow in regions of the United States like the South that we don't typically get winter storms like this. And you can see partially the reason why is if you look at the GFS, this is the temperature anomaly. So this represents the temperatures in terms of departures from normal. And look at all of this massive cold air that we have across the eastern United States, extends all the way from the East Coast into the northern Midwest. And that's where we have all of the extreme cold mornings in effect right now. This is what's leading. This is why we have the setup we do for for the winter storm along the south. We have a low pressure that's going to develop, and it'll tap into all of this cold air that is in place across the south. And then watch as we head into Tuesday. It really gets cold. Look at some of these anomalies. I think as much as 12 to even 16, even 20 degrees Celsius below normal. Very significant. And watch as we head into Wednesday, and then into Thursday, and then into Friday, and into the end of the week. And this is actually the 12Z run. The cold remains. So that means any snow accumulations, any ice accumulations on the road, it'll probably be cold enough to stick and not melt at all significantly through the end of the week. So that means we're going to be dealing with several days with snow on the ground throughout portions of the south before it finally warms up enough that we'll probably see significant to complete melting as we head towards the end of the week into early next week. So that means very treacherous conditions on the roads and very slick as conditions as well that will remain through the end of the week because it will not warm up immediately. And I can already tell you, especially if you're not a fan of the cold weather across the South, it'll definitely not be a fun week when it comes to weather. But if you are a fan of the snow, especially if you are in Texas or Louisiana, I don't know who is in that in that area. Enjoy. This is probably going to lead to a few inches of snow, and we'll continue to update you throughout the week. Decided to post a video today to talk about it. We'll also talk about it tomorrow in terms of any model updates that occur. And I do see that generally some of the models as well have been uptrending on the totals over Louisiana, so watch that as well. And when it comes to snow totals, it'll also really depend on banding of the snow in terms of specific bands with higher snow rates. We could potentially see areas that could see more than 6 inches across portions of Louisiana and even into Georgia and the Carolinas as well. Watch out for snow accumulations there. And then northern Florida could potentially get in on some freezing rain. And also, let's really quickly talk about this. Northern Florida, especially around the Tallahassee area, they'll also get in on some snow accumulations as well. We'll see how much they get in. So generally 4 to 6 inches, southern Louisiana. And then the GFS has as well a few inches of accumulating snow across portions of southern Georgia, and northern Florida too. Although this probably, it includes some of the sleet as well. So the totals are a little off. So, but generally, along the southern Gulf Coast, including northern Florida and southern Louisiana, expect heavy snow, accumulations up to several inches, depending on where you are, and especially along the Florida Panhandle, around the Tallahassee area, potentially expect up to several inches of snow and ice accumulations as well. And that'll certainly make travel conditions very hazardous. So if you don't have anywhere to go this week, I generally recommend you to stay home and stay safe and stay warm as well because it'll be cold throughout the rest of the week. And we'll continue to update you as well. We're going to do a video, decided to do this video today. We're also going to do another update tomorrow. So if you want to stay tuned for that, and if you enjoy what you saw today, would really recommend you to like, comment, subscribe. If you have family or friends in the South and you want to notify them of the weather that is on their way, send this video over to them. They'll get notified and informed as well, hopefully, if you found this video informative. And also stay tuned for my updates that I'll have throughout the week. I'm going to do videos tomorrow and throughout the rest of the week as well to continue to update you on this winter weather headed your way, especially if you're in the South. And of course, if you are here for my tropical weather videos that I do every single week, we'll obviously have those videos as well coming this Saturday. Thanks for tuning in today. Hope you enjoyed. Hope all of you stay safe, stay warm, peace, love, and kindness to you all, and we will talk again very soon. Bye.